Chapter 25, Seedless Plants. Seedless plants include mosses, horsetails, and ferns, and were the dominant plant life up until 300 million years ago. Now they make up a smaller portion of the plant kingdom. All plants and some green algae are monophyletic, being descendants of a common ancestor. Just like animals, plants had to evolve strategies to survive the transition from water to land, such as the ability to stand upright and prevent desiccation. Seedless plants have some adaptations, but most of these are not very tall, and most still require a moist environment to survive. There are more than 300,000 species of plants, with around 40,000 being seedless. Land plants evolved from the protist lineage Archaeoplastida, which includes the red algae, or Rhodophyta, and the green algae, Chlorophyta and Charophyta. The green algae are likely the ancestor of land plants because they contain chlorophylls A and B and keratin, which is similar in proportions to plants. Land plants have to be able to withstand gravity on land, mutagenic UV radiation, lack of water for reproduction, and not drying out. None of these things are possible for algae at this point. Plants, like most eukaryotic organisms, are sexually reproducing with both haploid and diploid cells. As you recall, fungi are haplontic, or haploid dominant, and animals are diplontic, or diploid dominant. Plants are termed haplodiplontic as they alternate between haploid and diploid life stages. This is called alternation of generations. And the way this works is plants have a diploid zygote, which then forms into a sporophyte, which is technically the adult version of the plant. And the sporophyte's job is to produce spores. But spores are technically formed on sporangia, which can be things like aspects of pine cones, fruits, and then in ferns underneath the leaves. And these sporangia have spore mother cells that undergo meiosis to produce spores. Those spores then grow and develop into a gametophyte. And the gametophyte is a haploid plant structure. Here we're looking at a fern, and this is a fern gametophyte. And what the fern gametophyte will do is it's going to produce sperm and egg. In other words, gametes. Eventually, those gametes will fuse together, and that forms the zygote, which starts the diploid life cycle again. Plant evolution trends towards a more diploid dominant or sporophyte phase. Spores are released into the environment when conditions are right and then germinates into a haploid gametophyte. The gametophyte makes gametes, and the female gametophyte harbors the egg, while the male gametophyte makes sperm. Sperm travels to the egg where fertilization occurs, and a young sporophyte germinates out of the zygote. Homosporous plants produce a single gametophyte that makes both gametes. This is common in non-vascular plants. Heterosporous plants produce two types of gametophytes, and this is more common in the seedless vascular plants. Microspores, which are smaller, produce male gametophytes, and megaspores, which are much larger, produce female gametophytes. And they're called such because sperm cells are much smaller in size than egg cells, hence the mega prefixes. Sporopollenin surrounds the spores and acts as a protective barrier against chemical and biological degradation. It also prevents desiccation, or drying out. Gametangia, or a gametangium, are the portion of the gametophyte that actually makes the gametes. A male gametangium is called an antheridium, which makes sperm. Pictured here is a male moss antheridium. A female gametangium is called an archegonium, and pictured here is a female moss archegonium, which makes eggs. After fertilization, the embryo remains and develops inside the archegonium as a sporophyte. Plant evolution trends towards the reduction or absence of gametangia in seed plants. Apical meristems are regions of rapid cellular division found near the tips of the roots and the shoots. This allows plants to grow towards resources such as light for the shoot and water for the roots. In trees, a lateral meristem is used to provide growth in diameter over the years. Early plants and modern non-vascular plants don't grow more than a few inches above the ground. To reduce competition for sunlight, rather than growing in a crowded mat, shoots started to form with the help of specialized structures. Air provides little support for plants, unlike water, so vascular tissues, xylem and phloem, were developed to help plants reach taller heights, while also providing water, nutrients, and sugar throughout the plant. Xylem conducts water and minerals from the roots up to the shoots, and phloem tissue transports food made from photosynthesis from the shoots through the plants. Xylem contains lignin, which provides structural strength to the vascular tissue, ultimately making plants stand up straight. Leaves and stems have a waxy cuticle to prevent desiccation. Unfortunately, it prevents CO2 from going into the leaves. Stomata are tiny pores on the bottoms of the leaves that bring in carbon dioxide. Air provides no protection against UV light. Plants evolve flavonoids, which are pigments that absorb harmful UV rays and protect sensitive plant tissues. Plants can't move away from animal predators, but they have developed many different defense mechanisms. Spines and thorns, such as on this prickly pear, simply smelling bad or having a bad taste, or producing toxins which can cause disease or death in the animal. Many plants have co-evolved alongside animals, using animals to assist with pollination and reproduction. Insects and birds are major plant pollinators, and many vertebrates consume seeds and defecate them at a distance from the parent plant. The ancestors of land plants began colonizing the land during the Ordovician period of the Paleozoic era over 500 million years ago. Most likely, early plants were low-lying, spore-forming plants that lacked true leaf tissues. Cooksonia came about during the Silurian, which had a slender branching stems with sporangia at the tips. By the end of the Devonian, ferns, horsetails, and seed plants began to develop. The evolution of land plants enriched the atmosphere with oxygen, allowing for animals to eventually evolve on land. Plant mycorrhizal relationships were evident starting back in these times. Land plants, alongside red algae, chlorophytes, and charophytes, are all part of kingdom Plantae. However, a major clade of green plants is called streptophytes, which forms the charophytes, considered an outgroup of land plants, and the embryophytes, known as the land plants. The land plants are divided into two clades: non-vascular plants, which lack the vascular tissue, such as xylem and phloem, needed to transport water, nutrients, and photosynthetic products. Instead, they end up forming low-lying sporophytes. These include the mosses, hornworts, and liverworts. Vascular plants, which all have xylem and phloem tissues, first arose in the late Ordovician around 500 to 435 million years ago. Vascular plants can be divided into two clades: the seedless plants, which reproduce using spores alone and are broken down into two groups: lycophytes, which include club mosses, spike mosses, and quillworts; pterophytes, which include whisk ferns, horsetails, and ferns; and seed plants, called spermatophytes, which reproduce using seeds and are also split into two groups: gymnosperms, which have seeds exposed and include conifers and cycads; and angiosperms, which have seeds enclosed in fruits and include all flowering plants. And in our next video, we will be looking at the ancestors of all plants, the green and red algae, and then moving on to the bryophytes.